Moving birds around today, and just thought I'd cover something that was brought up, and that was different types of mating, particularly inbreeding. And as you can see, these hens here, they're enjoying their new pens. I'll have to keep an eye on them though, because they haven't been this close to each other before. So we'll watch them, and I did the same over here. I put two hens side by side that haven't been that close to each other, but so far everybody seems to be behaving themselves. So the question was, what kinds of matings do I do? Do I inbreed my birds? And here's basically what I gotta say. Anything that's purebred is line bred, and anything that's line bred is inbred. So the fastest way to lock in traits, desirable or undesirable, depending on how skilled you are, is to breed related animals to each other in succession. Now, my Morgan white hackles, the spangled birds, they all trace back to 4 birds, and of those 4, 3 of them come from one breeder and 1 year. 2 of those birds were not toe punched, 1 was, so I know that at least 1 hen was not fully related to the other 2 birds. Now, what I did when I got that trio is I bred them as 2 pairs to try to establish 2 lines. And what I ended up doing over the years is I would breed back to the original hens and the original rooster every year. I'd find a favorable bird out of the previous year's mating whose parent was either that hen or that rooster, and I'd breed back. Now, eventually I had multiple brood pens, so I was widening the gene pool to an extent. This black spangle hen, she has blood in her from the 4th hen, and that bird's bloodline intersects back to mine somewhere in the neighborhood of 1940 to 1950. Whether or not those 2 bloodlines commingled between the 50s and the 2000s, I honestly don't know, because I don't have any way of finding that out right now. So they are distantly related. The brassyback rooster that I have on cord and his red brother came out of this hen, bred to her full brother. The reason I did that was because by the time I got around to breeding them, 1, they were already several years old. 2, I had lost their original mother, and the plan had been to continue to breed back to her, same as I did with the original trio. Now, obviously, their father was out of the original trio, so she carries blood from both lines, and you can see that in the fact that she's bigger. She took the brassyback gene from her mom, and also one thing I've noticed about birds out of that hen is they tend to have more white in them from the get-go, and they get whiter with age, whereas the birds from my original trio, the amount of white they have as a 1 or 2 year old hen is more or less what they're going to have into old age. Questions were also asked about fertility and size. Now, like I said, inbreeding is a great way to lock in traits. This buff colored hen over here, as you can see, is even bigger than this one, but she carries the same Morgan blood as this one. The reason she's bigger is the gull blood that's in that line. And the gulls, if I would have known what I had known at the time, I would have gotten some pure ones from the guy. I lost my chance. People move, get out of birds, that happens. But the bloodline he had was an old inbred bloodline. The man he got them from had bred them long enough and bred enough of them that he had them anywhere from clear down to a 3.5, 4 pound rooster, all the way up to a 7.5 pound rooster. And that way he could stay within the family and breed smaller birds to larger birds to maintain size. Or if he started getting too big, he could throw some small birds in, or if he started getting too small, he could throw some big birds in. So you can keep a closed flock, you just have to get your genetic base wide at first and try to maintain it, but with related individuals. So the birds from the original trio of Morgans, they're super tiny, they stay tiny. I don't have much hope of getting them bigger. The only way I can do that is to put other blood into them. And that's what I did here. As a result of them being smaller, I believe, they also tend to set on less eggs. I don't think that their overall egg production has gone down. I just think that they know their body can't cover them. So those hens are going to cover 6 eggs at most, 7, somewhere in there. Whereas these bigger hens, you can get closer to 10 or 12, which is obviously favorable. Fertility is an issue. And also, I will tell you from inbreeding other breeds that if there is bad traits or weak traits in the bloodline, it will surface. So again, you got to try and keep your gene pool wide, keep a variety of birds to breed from. I've had birds born with webbed toes, for example, in some Bantam Silkies I had one year. That just can happen. Now, what kind of matings should a person do? Well, I don't have a real set pattern on how I breed, to be honest, other than I try to use related individuals and I try to do pair matings. So what I do is I look for 2 birds that complement one another, and there was a breeder named Bacon Nevison. He was in a DVD pack of interviews I bought when I was in college, and he described it as blanket method breeding. And basically what that means is you look at each hen and each rooster as a blanket that has holes in it. And your goal as a breeder is to take the 2 blankets that will cover each other's holes to make a better blanket. So I like to breed the offspring back to their parent a lot. You can also breed, you know, a niece to an uncle, an aunt to a nephew, grandfather to granddaughter, etc. Brother to sister mating is the one that most people shy away from, and I would advise it as well. But sometimes you just don't have any other option. Reason you want to stay away from brother-sister mating is they already basically have the same genes, and as a result, what's going to happen is you're going to get some birds that are clearly superior to them. You're going to get a lot of them that are just like them, and you're going to get a bunch that are just absolutely horrible because it's all the bad genes pairing up. Now, that's a quick way to find out what kind of bad genes you've got floating around in your flock, but if you keep good records, you can pretty much keep track of that too, and if you select hard. So, not really something I'd recommend. Plus, I mean, then you don't really have any room for making any changes, you know. So generally speaking, yes, I tend to breed offspring back to their parent, and then what I'll do is I keep doing that until I feel that the offspring from those matings have finally surpassed the original bird I'm breeding back to, and then that bird will become the one that I breed back to for several generations. There was a pair that I bred a few years back. It was, the male was being bred to his daughter, and the daughter was out of him bred back to his mother, if that gives you an idea. And his mother was one of the original hens. So, hope that sheds some light. Hope I didn't confuse people too much. But thanks for watching. Keep the suggestions coming. We try to get them when we can. And hope you all enjoy your weekend.